Dave Larson's perfect life shattered when he uncovered a forbidden affair between his wife Astrid and his daughter Freya. What began as a secret passion ended in a deadly confrontation. How did this family's darkest secret lead to murder? He seemed to have it all. As the CEO of a successful tech startup in Pinehurst, he was the epitome of a powerful businessman, charismatic, confident, and always dressed to impress. With his salt and pepper hair and tailored suits, Dave was a regular at charity events and board meetings, where his presence alone commanded attention. But while his professional life flourished, his personal life wasn't as smooth. After 10 years of marriage to Ingrid Bergman, the couple divorced, leaving Dave with full custody of their daughter Freya. Dave's life took a sharp turn when he met Astrid Nealon, a vibrant and energetic event planner during a business conference in Stockholm. By 2022, Freya had moved out for university, but a sudden dormitory renovation brought her back home. For Dave, this was a golden opportunity to rebuild his strained relationship with his daughter. He had hoped that having her back under the same roof would allow them to reconnect. Freya's return, however, would become the tipping point for the family. Initially, things were awkward. Freya's quiet nature and strained relationship with her father hadn't changed, and now she was adjusting to life with Astrid as a more permanent presence in her daily life. Dave, often away for work, missed the subtle undercurrents that began brewing at home. It was Astrid who made the real effort to connect with Freya. Recognizing Freya's love for books, she started engaging her in conversations about literature, art, and philosophy, slowly building a bond between them. At first, it seemed like an innocent relationship, an older woman offering intellectual companionship to a young, introverted girl. But soon, it became clear that the connection between Astrid and Freya was deepening beyond what anyone had expected. To understand what was happening, you have to look at Astrid's past. Before she met Dave, Astrid had lived a very different life. In her younger years, she was openly part of Stockholm's vibrant LGBTQ community and had been in a serious relationship with a woman named Maja Bergström. But societal pressures and her own fears about her career and family led her to bury that part of herself. Returning to Pinehurst, Astrid tried to suppress those feelings, focusing on building a normal life with Dave. However, Freya's presence brought all those repressed desires flooding back. The intellectual connection they shared began to morph into something more emotional, and soon, something physical. One evening, when Dave was away on a business trip, Astrid and Freya found themselves alone. They were discussing a passage from Mrs. Dalloway when the conversation took a deeper turn. Overcome by emotion and years of suppressed feelings, Astrid leaned in and kissed Freya. From that moment on, there was no turning back. Their affair escalated quickly, fueled by passion and guilt. They orchestrated secret meetings, sneaking off to secluded cafes, or making excuses to be alone together. Dave wasn't stupid. He didn't know exactly what was going on, but something about Astrid and Freya's closeness didn't sit right with him. It started out as little things, glances between them that lingered a second too long, hushed whispers that would abruptly stop when he walked into the room. At first, he tried to brush it off as just a stepmother and stepdaughter getting along. But over time, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. It was the late-night work meetings that raised the first red flag. Astrid had always been busy with her event planning job, but suddenly, her work seemed to require a lot more late nights. Freya, too, with her study groups, was constantly leaving the house at odd hours. There was tension in the air, something unsaid, but palpable. Then, one day, Dave made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't handle the unease any longer. So, instead of going to his own late-night business meeting, he parked a block away from their house and followed Astrid when she left. As he trailed her, he felt like he was on the edge of uncovering something devastating. But he had no idea just how bad it was going to be. Astrid drove to a small cafe on the outskirts of town. And to Dave's horror, Freya was already there. He watched from a distance as they sat close, their hands entwined. And then, in that moment, he saw it. Astrid leaned in and kissed Freya. It wasn't a friendly peck on the cheek, it was a full-on kiss, filled with passion that screamed of betrayal. Dave's heart sank. His wife and his daughter, the two people he trusted most, were wrapped up in a secret affair. Dave returned home numb with shock, rage boiling beneath the surface. As he sat in the darkened living room, every moment of their affair played over and over in his head. By the time Astrid and Freya returned, giggling quietly as they unlocked the front door, Dave was simmering, waiting for his moment. They didn't even realize he was home until they walked into the room. "I thought you had a late meeting tonight," Astrid said, her voice strained with forced casualness. "I was about to say the same thing to you," Dave replied coldly. "How was your event planning session?" Astrid's face drained of color as Dave's words sunk in. He knew. And with those words, all the deceit, all the lies came crashing down. Freya stood there frozen, her eyes wide with fear as Dave's accusations flew like daggers. The argument erupted quickly, each word dripping with years of pent-up resentment and betrayal. Dave shouted, accusing them of destroying his life, of breaking the family apart. In his rage, Dave grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the side table, threatening to hurl it across the room. Astrid lunged for him, trying to stop him, and in the chaotic struggle, the vase slipped from Dave's hand, connecting with his own temple with a sickening crack. The sound of glass shattering was nothing compared to the horrifying sight of Dave crumpling to the floor, blood pooling beneath his head. Astrid and Freya stood frozen for a moment, their hearts pounding in their chests as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Dave was dead. And now they were left with a body and the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same again. Panic set in quickly. Astrid, always quick to take charge, grabbed Freya's trembling hands. "We have to cover this up," she whispered, her voice shaky but determined. "No one will believe it was an accident." In a flurry of movement, they wiped away fingerprints, disturbed a few drawers, and created the illusion of a burglary gone wrong. They agreed on a story. They had come home to find Dave dead, the house in disarray. It was all they could do to avoid suspicion. At first, their plan seemed to work. When the police arrived, Astrid played her part to perfection, her tears genuine as she recounted the fabricated story. Freya, pale and shaking, corroborated every detail, adding how valuable items had been stolen from the house. But as the investigation wore on, the cracks in their story began to show. Detective Lana Holberg was no fool. Something about their version of events didn't sit right with her. She noticed small inconsistencies, little details that didn't add up. The exact time they claimed to have returned home, the way the house had been disturbed, the positioning of Dave's body. Then there was the security camera footage from a nearby street, which showed Astrid and Freya together long before they claimed to have arrived home. With each new piece of evidence, their carefully constructed lies started to fall apart. Under the pressure of interrogation, Freya was the first to crack. In a moment of emotional breakdown, she admitted that they had been there when Dave died, but insisted it was an accident. Once Freya started talking, it was only a matter of time before the full truth came out. Under relentless questioning, Astrid finally broke down as well, confessing to the affair with Freya and the events that led to Dave's death. The scandal shook Pinehurst to its core. The once perfect Larson family was now the subject of gossip, and the truth was far darker than anyone could have imagined. So what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.